Good morning, Charles. How are you?
I'm well, Dan. Thank you. How are you?
I am also well. I think I need to come up with a new response. I'm kind of getting tired of saying well all the time. But yeah. I'm doing well considering I've been trying to get my circadian rhythm back on track. I'm reading a book dedicated to circadian rhythms, and turns out that it's not just based on light and our sleep cycle. Okay. Each organ has its own circadian rhythm that is independent of, like, there's a master circadian clock in our brain, and organs operate differently on a different time scale based on different triggers. So, for example, some of our organs that process food, they don't operate based on light. They base their processing on when you feed it food. The first time you take a bite of anything is basically what starts and triggers and activates that circadian rhythm for that organ. So most likely like the liver, because it does a lot of the work when we're eating, but other organs that are involved with digestion and metabolism and things like that. So our sleeping is definitely triggered by light, but individual organs are triggered by food. And so there is an optimal circadian rhythm for when we're eating as well. I'm coming to learn. So I've been learning about that, trying to make some adjustments, and it's been it's been a little bit of an adventure so far. So yeah.
Are you still waking up in the middle of the night and eating food because you're hungry?
Yeah, I am, and that's one of the things, right? But he does talk about in the book. He does talk specifically about how to kind of counteract that. But it's basically just you drink water and suck it up, basically for about a week, and then you should start to not get hungry anymore, because it takes your body about a week to make those adjustments. But something he does talk about is that it's the first bite or sip. It is considered a trigger for eating.
Does water count?
No, water does not count.
Okay,
but black coffee does count.
Yeah. Okay. I read that before.
And what he says is because of the caffeine,
right? It
could trigger it. It alters your metabolism, right? So my next question is, what about decaf coffee? But anyway. I'm going to stay away from both of those. And so he says when you're doing these fasting windows where you do like a 16-8, and you're doing some intermittent fasting, it really is not – you're not really doing it if you have a cup of coffee in the morning between, let's say, 9 and 11, and then you don't eat till 11. You think, oh, I'm fasting starting at 11. No. He's like, your body responds to that. And that was a little enlightening for me.
I would actually, I'd be curious to see if one could make the argument. And again, this is me based on me not knowing anything, but just intuiting things. I would think even if you start your day with a glass of water, if it's really cold water, that might be something that your body could respond to, because it's like, okay, something not of the body is now in the body, and now the body has to react to it. Whereas if if you just have room temperature water or slightly warmed up water, I would think it would be less impact than a glass of ice water. You know what I mean?
Possibly. And probably you are right. I would guess I would agree with you in certain ways. So he also says you shouldn't adjust your medication to be in like that fasting window or not. He says that doesn't count, the medication.
Interesting. Okay.
Like that. So I think he's specifically talking about, which kind of, that doesn't line up, because caffeine isn't, a carbohydrate, protein, or fat, and neither is something that also might stimulate your body like cold water or, right. So regardless,
I would think popping an Adderall or some supplements or something would have a pretty big impact on your body. Like, right. I mean, any pill it's your liver's job to process pills. That's why, it's referenced often that taking a lot of, whether it's Tylenol or Advil or whatever, can be bad for you because of the impact it has on your liver, which is why, it's counterintuitive, but like people who inject heroin die less often than people who take OxyContin.
What? I did not know that.
People who do, people who get a good oxy habit going where they're doing like 20, 30 pills a day, it's just destroying their liver.
That makes sense.
And so, yeah, if you're just going, heroin right into your vein, you've got other problems and health concerns to deal with, but killing your liver isn't one of them.
Interesting. And the liver is so important for everything that it's crazy. So what he says is the scientific evidence, and they studied, thousands of different people. This is all done scientifically, and he had the backing of like the National Institute of Health and some really big, government agencies to help fund his studies. And so, what they found was that the benefits in terms of metabolic health, meaning, losing body fat, losing excess weight, energy levels, improved sleep, focus, all that started when you restricted your eating to 12 hours, which isn't
That's not super strict.
No.
Yeah, 12 hours is, most people could pull off 12 hours.
Right. And he said every time you cut that down by an hour, so you go down to 11,
right,
you double the benefits. You go down to 10.
Holy cow.
You double the benefits.
Wow.
It's exponential.
That's
from 12.
insane.
He said from 12 to 8, it's exponential. You would double, well, not exponential, but you double the benefits every single time from 12 to 8. After that, it's not that much of a difference after 8. But, so
that's huge.
So a lot of people get crazy with like they do the 24 or 22.2 or whatever, like the OMAD,
like 6 hour one.
But he says they saw the greatest bang for your buck at a 16-8 window.
Interesting.
But
that is a little tougher to comply with than 12-12.
Right. Absolutely. But what he said was most people don't really, when they interviewed them, and he's got an app at mycircadianclock.org where you can basically log everything that you're doing, you're sleeping, you're eating, all that stuff. And from there they can kind of figure out, all right, where, they have some back end research that they look at some of these people, and what they were saying was that a lot of us think that we are only eating for 12 hours a day. And he's like, no, most of us are eating for every waking hour.
We're putting
we're putting something
biologic in our mouth.
Correct. Yeah. Right. So he said, even, even after you brush your teeth or whatever, like you might get a handful of nuts or a sip of juice or a sip of coffee first thing in the morning. Like all of that counts as you're activating
you're out
the
of
problem.
Your window.
Right. So the problem, what happens then is with the reason why it's an issue and why it really affects your sleep is because your body's supposed to be cooling down. As soon as you eat, your body has energy, and now it warms up. And so now you're affecting all of your sleep processes, your release of your hormones, your melatonin, all that stuff from eating. So he's like 3 hours before bed, you should not be eating anymore.
Interesting.
It includes, water's okay, but yeah. So I'm looking to fix my sleep and get rid of some of these bags under my eyes.
I can hardly see them.
Yeah.
I can see I can see mine much clearer than yours.
It was. I don't know, man. I mean, what was great when we weren't on YouTube, you couldn't see them at all. It was amazing.
That's true. Yeah.
It was amazing. YouTube kind of brings them out a little bit off
versus 1080p HD. Yeah, I had heard that it changed the hair and makeup quite a bit when TV started going to HD, especially for like local news anchors and stuff like that. They had to put a lot more work into it because when you're on what were TV, like old standard TVs, they were like 240p or 360p resolution. They were pretty low. And so with, good lighting and stuff like that, you could get away with some stuff, but then everybody switched to HD and now it's like, okay, we've got to.
Yeah.
And people noticed, people were like, the news anchors don't look as good as they used to. Because there you go.
Well, yeah, maybe when you saw them in person, they were never as that is as attractive as you thought. Right.
I get to go out in public and nobody even recognizes me.
Yeah.
So I am I'm getting ready to dive into a new book because I'm having some upper back pain right now, and I can't think of anything that I really did to cause it. Other than just, some long commutes in the car. But, it's hard for me to give that all the credit for.
Dude, did somebody just walk 20 miles like in one
Yeah, that's true.
On one clip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, I would guarantee you.
I guess that could have an impact.
Absolutely. So,
all right. Well,
I don't know if that helps or hurts your mental state of mind. I mean, for me, having that explanation would make me feel a little bit better. Yeah. It's not like you're just getting old.
No, I don't think it's that. I'm going to explore. So, Howard Stern, one of our fellow broadcasters, obviously he's not as successful as we are, but he also has a little show.
Keep working, Howard.
And he had chronic back pain for a long time, and then had it vastly improved by Dr. John Sarno, who wrote a book called Healing Back Pain. And his take on it is basically it's about your emotional state. It's about being angry. It's about being sad. It's about being distracted. It's about and the tension that you hold in your back, as massage therapists like to tell you. The one potential way to alleviate that is through essentially some mindfulness and looking in on your internal states and seeing what you're feeling, what you're dealing with. And so I'm going to try that before. I mean, I'll probably go get a massage too, because that never hurts. But I'm gonna dive into this book a little bit and see if there's anything there, or if it's woo-woo nonsense, which I'm always on the guard for that.
I was about to go the woo-woo nonsense route, but then I thought about it, and I realized that a lot of times when I'm stressed, and I've been told this from dentists, is you kind of grind your teeth and it's you're squeezing your muscles, and without even realizing it, like in your jaw. So of course, why wouldn't we be, if we have some sort of stress going on in our lives, we're a little bit tense. I mean, the whole word tension, right? Is like we feel like we're squeezing our body. So yeah, man, I could absolutely see that would be an essential part of, if just being even stressed out, like not even being upset about something necessarily, but hey, busy week.
Right.
You've had a pretty busy week. I mean, you were driving. I mean, and that's the thing is, you're also doing some driving back and forth between here and, St. Pete, which are, long drives. Yeah. And then a busy schedule on top of that. And, juggling things and being concerned about, in this time of year, with all of the events going on, it's, even if they're fun events, it's something to add to the plate, something the brain has to think about and process.
Yeah.
So, actually, let me know how that goes. I bet you that's going to help.
Yeah.
The massage won't hurt either, but yeah.
Yeah. I got the audiobook downloaded yesterday, and I'm going to dive into it and try to do it with an open mind and not bail on it too early if it gets a little too woo woo, because I mean, obviously, your mind and your body are connected in ways that we don't understand yet. So it's not like this is, Jupiter's in retrograde, so that's why your back hurts. It's not that level of woo woo. It's like, okay, the things on your mind could be affecting the way your mind and your nervous system engage your muscles, and that could be the cause of pain. That sounds completely reasonable to me.
I mean, it makes perfect sense. Look, thousands of years ago, when we were out in the wilderness, hunting for animals or being hunted by animals, our brains, if we weren't concerned about or thinking about being hunted or hunting, which activates hormones, fight or flight for us. The people who didn't think about those things, they're the ones that got eaten, right? Or they're the ones who didn't eat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so we're descendants. We've got the genes from the people who are hypersensitive to outside noises, to things that are, would basically cause stress in our bodies, of course, and so the hormones and our muscles act. Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is going to work for you. If you, when you say I'm going to keep an open mind to it and gets too woo, I guess it depends on how he attempts to help you relax, right? Like maybe just that whatever meditation book you go to for you might be another option if this one is too woo woo,
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be. I feel like there's a good chance that it's going to be pretty balanced, and it'll probably have you do some exercises, I would imagine, where you make lists of the things that might be bothering you and see them written down on paper, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
which, I mean,
it absolutely works for me.
Yeah, writing things down is helpful in almost any domain. Yeah. So I'm going to give it a shot and see how it goes.
Cool.
I will probably. The other thing I've noticed is this upper back pain. And while the hike could be a factor, and and the stress of the hike, not just, the actual putting one foot in front of the other. Going for walks does tend to loosen me up a little bit. Not super long walks, not like, 10, 15 mile walks. But if, just going and doing a lap around Crane's Roost or a lap around the mall or something like that, that'll often shake some stuff loose, where I have noticed that when it hurts like the last time I heard it, where it's like, okay, I clearly just injured myself. I was deadlifting with bad form and it hurt way worse than it does now. And my response to that was, okay, I'm just going to lay in bed with a heating pad and put some, CBD, like super high end, Flexol, Bengay type stuff on the back and just take it easy, relax. And that was, it actually made it worse. It was just not moving at all made it way worse.
I remember that. Yeah.
Than just getting up and going for walks.
So the other thing that you told me was that you aren't doing your normal morning walks or haven't been consistent.
I haven't been consistently. Yeah. Yeah.
And that absolutely could affect it. The other thing you told me was you carried a pretty heavy fanny pack.
Oof, yes.
that you got into such a fight, you kicked it off the plane. But you weren't, and even though that was maybe kind of on your hips, that's going to throw.
Oh, it all affects everything. Yeah, for sure. I mean, your spine is just, the kinetic shape of your spine is very susceptible.
So, yeah, man, I think you just got to give yourself a little time to rest and try to get back into your old routines a little bit.
Yeah, but that was, the hike was October 1st. So just having these symptoms show up 10 days later seems a little suspect.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't know.
All right.
It could be. I mean, the driving's a factor too. I should probably get a lumbar thing to put on my
mattress. You were talking about upgrading your mattress too. So I don't know, like if you've got like a little divot in the middle there or whatever.
I don't seem to notice one.
You'd been talking about. I mean, it's on your mind, so there's got to be something going on because you talked about when I was getting mine.
Yeah.
So
I think I'm gonna go back to the first one that I got from my camper, which is all memory foam and gel and stuff. And the springs, the hybrid's nice for some things, but the upside of the quality of the sleep for me at least, for the memory foam and the gel mattresses offsets any of the other benefits. So.
And you don't sleep too warm on all memory foam kind of thing? Okay.
Like when the ones I've gotten where they have that top level of the gel infused stuff.
Okay.
That does seem to get the job done too.
Good.
And I think the one that I had also the actual cloth cover around the outside was made out of bamboo or something.
Nice.
So they're implementing some technology to help the hot sleepers. And man, it has been great. Recently I've been getting a little too cold at night because the AC hasn't had to work so hard to cool down from how hot it gets during the day because we've had temperatures slightly lower than they've been all summer. Obviously, I think the high the other day was 82, and so when I turned my air all the way down, it got nice and cold where it was so cold I didn't want to get out from under the covers, which is perfect for me.
Yeah, I love that.
All right, so let's see what else is going on. I did a big closet purge last couple days and dumped off a bunch of clothing at Goodwill last night, and so I'm trying to minimize even more the stuff in my camper and trying to boil things down so that it just makes laundry days easier, makes cleaning up easier. And I had so many, even like t-shirts like this that I was just barely ever wearing.
Okay.
I noticed I like the heather grays, the whites, and the olive. And I'll wear all those first, get all those dirty first before I move on to the other colors.
Yeah.
So I was like, why am I keeping these other colors if I clearly don't like wearing them? And so I just cleaned out everything, every t-shirt that wasn't either heather gray, white, or olive. I just donated all of them.
That's smart. Yeah. I now that you mention that, I tend to do the same thing with black and red.
Yeah.
And once in a while I'll do blue. Like this is my crazy blue. and then I'll get really nuts and do green.
Yeah.
After that though, and I've got all these other colors in I'm like, oh, I like the way this shirt fits. I like the way it looks. Let me just get it in every color. And then I just never end up. Yeah.
Yeah. I like
I'm a little wasteful.
I like the trick of turn all of your hangers in the opposite direction. And then when you take something and you use it and then you launder it and put it back with the hanger going the other way. And then after a couple of weeks, you look at all the stuff that you haven't touched and you're like, that's the stuff
Smart
I don't
way
wear.
Of doing it.
That's the stuff I don't need.
I'm on board. I'm doing that.
And then you just donate everything. And then you just, set whatever time works for you, whether it's 2 weeks or a month or 6 months. I mean, everybody's going to be different. But yeah, if you see that hanger is not moved in whatever amount of time, because of my small space, for me, I'm pretty strict. If I don't wear something in 2 or 3 weeks, other than very seasonal stuff, obviously, like a heavy coat. But if it should be a normal part of my rotation, but I'm not using it as a normal part of my rotation, it's going bye-bye. And so I got rid of a couple dozen items last night. So now I'm free to order a new Aviator Nation polo shirt in the color that I want.
Good.
1 in, 1 out, or 30 out and 1 in, whatever,
Hey, that's great if you can do it that way. With only 1 in. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to dinner tonight in a new place for your birthday.
I'm excited for that.
Bovine Steakhouse. Haven't decided what I'm going to get yet, whether I'm going to get a steak or, man, steakhouses. My go-to recently has been getting a steak or some sort of seafood salad at a steakhouse, because they make some pretty serious salads at steakhouses. Yeah. And when you get some protein added in there, I'm going to Seasons 52 on Sunday.
Nice.
And they have that ahi tuna salad that I got last time we went with Kurt and Richard and Leslie and them, and it was real tasty, and I'm looking forward to getting that again. Yeah. And so we'll see what they have at Bovine. If they've got a tempting salad, I might do that.
I might do that as well. I've been incorporating more salad and leafy greens into my diet just to try to get a little bit more bulk and fullness feeling from.
Yeah. Iceberg lettuce is great for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I try to avoid the iceberg.
I know it's not very. It's like nothing.
Gross. I mean,
I don't find it gross. It feels like I'm not eating anything.
I mean, yeah. No.
Yeah, romaine is definitely my preference, or some other more.
I'll do spinach. I'll do spinach too. I like spinach. I want the darker greens and things like that. It just
Ooh, remember that cheeseburger and paradise salad we got at Outriggers? That was tasty.
That was excellent. That was excellent.
Yes, salads with protein, that seems to be my go-to these days. All right, let's get into this wild book. Today's chapter is Never Use Logic to Fight Emotion. Logic Will Never Change Emotion or Perception by Edward de Bono. I gotta say it, man. I don't think this guy is crazy about women.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that he presents is presenting women acting like children, not like adult women. When in some of these case studies, I feel like these are outbursts that I remember seeing as a kid, like from my little sister, but like as a woman, I don't know if these still happen. Now, again, I haven't dated every woman on the planet. Same. So, I mean, his experience, again, we really shouldn't invalidate it, but at the same time, it's a little bit hard to swallow. It's that some of the times they seem really extreme. So
yeah, I mean, I will invalidate it. I will say,
if you won't, I will.
Invalidating experiences is one of the things I'm best at. If you ask the right people. No, I'm working on it. It's true. It's completely accurate, but I'm working on it. But no, here's what I'll say. I think the fact that you and I do not get into relationships with women who sit at a fancy restaurant and call us a dummy or an idiot, that's not just because we're lucky. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so if
are you complimenting my picker? Is that the first time?
Your picker has plenty of problems, but one of them is not picking women that call you an idiot at,
all right, I'll take it.
Fancy restaurant.
I'll take it all day long.
Yeah, I would say that if you're a guy and you constantly find yourself in relationships with women who are behaving like the women in these case studies, then you may need to take a break from dating
or write a book and make millions of dollars.
Well, maybe thousands or hundreds of dollars. Okay. We don't know how many this is sold or what kind of deal he got.
That's fair.
But yeah, I would say it's a little, I mean, again, I don't know. Maybe guys are dealing with this kind of behavior, but if they are, I would say that is mostly on you, that you're letting people like that into your life, not on, I need to learn how to manage the behavior of these insane women. So you need to manage your own behavior.
Here's the other thing. The way he's describing some of these scenes, to me, is like if you were in a restaurant and one of these scenes happened, the entire restaurant would know about it, I feel. Right.
And I go to restaurants a lot and I don't see this.
Correct. Me too. That's exactly what I was about to say, is like and we've been out in public quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I have never seen that, or heard things like that. So yeah, how common is that? I think maybe the idea is, if we, if you ever want to get interviewed by us, if
you better not listen to what I've said the last, couple months, he's not going to want to do that interview.
So I mean, I think it's just he's using an extreme example to make some of the points that he's trying.
But it's not even just the case studies. Like there's one part that says, the more you attempt to reason with a woman, the more she'll resist. Another sentence: a woman doesn't care if she's right or wrong. She only cares about how she feels.
Okay, well that's all right. Yeah, I don't agree with that.
And yeah, I find him to be generalizing in a way, both generalizing women and generalizing situations where, look, there are situations where, and this would be true for a man as well as a woman, if you've been triggered, if you've been activated, if you're upset about something, then yeah, you may get to a point where you don't care if you're right or wrong. All you care about is the negative feelings that you're struggling with. But then again, it's also, you can't just say a woman doesn't care if she's right or wrong. She only cares about how she feels in the present. I mean, if a woman, is a successful business owner and she's in charge of making payroll and getting business done, and then, you go to her and say, hey, I think it'd be better if we did this instead of this. And she's like, I don't care what you say. All I care about is how I feel. I mean, that's painting with a cartoonish brush.
Yeah. I think the problem here is he's swinging. So I think a lot of people are coming from one extreme. Men are coming from one extreme in terms of the perspective, in terms of feeling frustrated at times when they don't understand and don't know how to communicate effectively to really understand, and also don't have an ability to read the room so much and just try to understand, hey, look, she's upset about something. Now is not the time to reason your way out of it or play Mr. Fix-It sometimes. And a lot of us do that. I mean, I'm absolutely guilty of playing Mr. Fix-It.
Oh, me too.
And not just in relationships, but I mean, that's what we do for a living, right? We fix things. So that's our default, and of course nobody likes to feel uncomfortable and upset. So we want to fix that immediately too. So what I think, and I'm not saying he's right, but what I'm thinking is, again, I like to figure out why he might be doing things, but I think we're all coming from one, Mr. Fix-It perspective. And what he's trying to say is, look, here's another extreme example. It's too far to the extreme where a woman doesn't care about anything other than her emotional state at the time, which isn't accurate either most of the time. But just kind of hey guys, don't try to play Mr. Fix-It. Try to be there and and he gets into that in the next chapter a little bit, but but in a bad way. He talks about like kind of mirror her emotions. But I think the idea is just kind of, try to present like a calming presence and just kind of, just listen, just kind of be there rather than get into the weeds. Because I feel like I know when I've done that in the past, I end up making a woman or somebody who's emotional, could be, like my little sister or whatever, or another guy, whatever. Instead of getting into the weeds, I know if somebody did that with me, I would feel frustrated because I'd feel kind of almost stifled because you're asking me logical questions and I haven't fully processed my emotions yet. And then to take me out of that mode of where I'm processing and like letting things go and letting things out, I could see getting frustrated with the person who's trying to get me out of that state when I'm not fully ready to be out of that state. Does that make sense? Am I I'm rambling a little bit. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, it's also in the context of you're one of these fucking Libras who's got to make peace with everybody, and it's so annoying.
I know, we're the worst.
I mean, it is possible that the guy says stuff like this because he's bad at his job or he's a bad person. I'm not saying those are true.
Yeah.
But those are also possibilities.
Absolutely. I'm fair. That's fair.
It could not be like, well, maybe he's just trying to approach it from this nuanced thing. maybe he's a decent author, a good psychologist, and also a shitty person. I mean, that's a possibility too.
Sure.
But because when a woman doesn't care if she's right or wrong, she only cares about how she feels. It wouldn't cost that much more to print this book for him to say, when in a highly charged emotional conflict, a woman might not care if she's right or wrong. But he chose not to say that because he felt like the way he said it was good enough. And so, I mean, you can use logic and reason. If you and your wife are deciding what school would be best for the kids or whether to refinance your mortgage or something, you don't need to go into that discussion thinking, okay, so she's not really going to care what the best thing to do is. She's only going to worry about how she feels about it. So I've got to figure out a way to manipulate her emotions so she'll agree with the thing I want to do. And I think that's the product. That's what comes out of reading books where authors talk this way.
Yeah. Fair. Okay. I could see that perspective.
So it's too sloppy. He should be more careful about it. Okay, so let's get into the dumb case studies. Okay, so the first one, a couple's having lunch and the gal kind of goes silent and doesn't really, something's happened and she's not interacting at the level that she did before. So the guy's like, did I do something wrong? She just gives him a look. Why don't you just tell me if something's wrong? I don't want to talk about it. Talk about what? I'm fine. Don't worry. Of course I'm worried. You're obviously upset about something. Otherwise you wouldn't be acting this way. Please tell me what's wrong. I hate to see you like this. See me like what? Like you are now. Sad, unhappy. So he just keeps going.
Right. And that was where I got the idea of this guy in this case study. He keeps poking her and going, tell me. And it's like, she's not ready to communicate.
I have been right there and I will tell you 100%. It is not because I cared about what was bothering her. It's because I felt uncomfortable with
or threatened.
Like maybe I did something. Maybe she's mad at me. Maybe she's going to leave me. Maybe she thinks I'm a bad person.
Oh, absolutely. So, me too, dude.
Now
it's coming out of fear. It's not coming out of care for her.
Nope, absolutely not. It's caretaking.
And that's interesting because that is like a nice guy syndrome where it's a covert contract.
Oh, absolutely.
You aren't being who you truly are. Right. Instead of going, I'm scared I did something, like if you came to her and go, I'm scared I fucked something up or I did something wrong. That's the truth. Right. Or Lord, that you're going to leave me. Of course, we're never going to say that. Right. I mean, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then so I think. That's interesting. It's really interesting.
It's two things. I want to get to the root of what's going on. And I also want to get you over how you're feeling right now because I'm not comfortable with it. Yeah. So if I can just fix this problem immediately, then I solve both of those things. Mm-hmm. You go from sad to happy and I go from insecure to secure.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to ask you what's wrong as many times as I need to so that you can say this exact thing is what's wrong, perform this action to fix it, and then this situation goes away and everything's fine.
That's a great formula.
Yeah, it's too bad that humans don't function that way, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I definitely I get where this guy's coming from, and it's so much easier to see it in other, even fake people in case scenarios and case studies than it is to see it in yourself. Because when you're in the middle of that and you're like, I don't think I did anything wrong. And part of it is, I mean, the selfish part of it is this is unfair. I'm being subjected to her negative emotions and I didn't even do anything to deserve it.
Right.
And so
or I was not informed of something that I've done. I may have done something and this isn't fair because you didn't tell me about it.
Yeah. And then we go into that mode where we've got to ease this anxiety. And I mean, anxiety is really, it's the theme of, I mean, pretty much every negative thing that happens in a relationship is the cause of somebody's anxiety.
Yeah.
One partner or both partners are feeling something they don't want to feel, and then they're trying to deal with it in the way that they do deal with it based on the tools that they came out of their childhood with, and it often ends up making things worse, not better.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, a lot of it for me is just not being afraid to communicate and potentially, tell people exactly how you're feeling about things. That's not a skill set that I was really, taught or honed until I got a little bit older. You need to feel like you're going to be okay no matter what happens.
No, absolutely.
That is what you really, for me, that's the mindset is, yeah, even if I do say these things and it's the absolute, vulnerable truth, I'm going to be okay. And even if worst case scenario, my primitive brain comes up with all these terrible scenarios that might happen if I say these things, I need to come back to, I'm going to be okay no matter what.
Yeah.
And the more I do that, the easier it is for me to have those conversations and to communicate. Doesn't mean it's always easy, but it does get a little bit easier. And then, then the next thing I think of is my presence in this environment. Am I bringing value or am I taking value? Right. And part of and then how can I bring value? Does that mean I'm there to listen? Am I there to, bounce ideas off of, or am I, let's kind of read the room a little bit. What would be the best thing that I can do right now? And a lot of times me feeling uncomfortable is not the relief of me feeling uncomfortable is not how I should be bringing value.
Right.
It's that is taking value.
Exactly.
And that's something I need to figure out how to do on my own is deal with that uncomfortableness.
Yeah.
And once I realize that's my responsibility and it's not from, I need to pull that from somebody else. Why would somebody else want, who's already maybe upset?
Right.
They don't have the capacity to necessarily give and be generous with their energy or their thoughts.
Right. Nor should they have to.
Correct. Right. And I'm not doing anything. I'm not holding up my part of that relationship if I am taking when they need, or vice versa.
Yeah, and I've been guilty of that too. When you're having a conflict with a partner, because of something that's bothering them that they bring to you, and then you make the fight or the issue no, let's make this about something that I'm upset about or I'm offended by, and then that will reduce we'll still spend a couple miserable hours in a fight with each other, and that sucks, but at least the anxiety of, feeling like I'm to blame for something. No, I'll accuse you of something, and then I won't feel so anxious about being the one that caused this.
Here's something I just thought of.
Okay.
I think a reason why sometimes arguments escalate to the point of where people are physically doing things either to each other or throwing things, yelling.
Yeah.
Action relieves anxiety.
That's
Physical
true.
Movement relieves anxiety. Our fight or flight hormones ramp up.
Right.
Our energy level, like glucose and glycogen, gets released from the liver. Our bodies have all this extra energy that needs to be burned off. So you combine, these emotions that we've got with all this extra energy. I think that's why a lot of arguments end up to be, physical altercations, or just not even an altercation, but just a lot of
just physically acting out in some way too.
And then when you watch somebody do that, it looks like they're really upset, and then that ramps up your emotions a little bit more and makes you more anxious, and that increased anxiety just kind of builds on each other from each other. And so I think that's interesting. Maybe I don't know if anybody recommends this, but when you've got when you're arguing with somebody, go for a walk with them. And try to, and I know I'm more creative when I'm thinking, when I'm walking, but maybe next time there's a really bad argument, it's let's go for a walk together and just do the discussion while we're walking, while we're doing something physical. And maybe that would help bring down some of that anxiety as well.
Or certainly go for the walk by yourself.
Oh, for sure.
Then, take the break, and then, which is, one of these lacking skills in my toolbox was being able to take a break from a conflict. And, again, it's like when that insecurity kicks in and it's like, no, we have to fix this now, or else who knows what horrible thing could happen.
Right.
So no breaks. We have to fix this right now.
Yeah.
And where, taking the break and going for the walk would certainly.
So let me ask you, whenever you were having some of these arguments and, you got a sense that the other person wanted to take a break, did they ever communicate that to you, or do they just walk away?
No,
they say
perfectly.
Did they say, hey, let's take a break and then, and then go away? Or was it just like they just walked away?
No, for the most part, it was perfectly communicated, and I was still like, no, we have to solve this now.
Okay, well, that's on you then.
Yeah, it was definitely on me. No, if anybody was the initiate a break by just storming off, that would be me.
Okay.
That would have been something I would do, not my partner.
And when I was younger, same thing. I didn't, and that would drive some people nuts. And
as well as should. It would drive me nuts if somebody did it to me.
But all I needed to do was, I think, if I could go back and
just announce your intention.
Just say, yeah, I need a break. I'm coming back to this. But I didn't have the mental whatever to even think of doing that at the time. And it just drove them nuts, and it made it much worse.
Oh, absolutely.
Because now they're chasing me.
This episode is already telling me I need to, in addition to the back pain book, I need to read Dr. Julie's book again. That book is so good. It's been a few months since I've done a deep dive into it. Mm-hmm. Or maybe I'll just re-listen to our episodes of the podcast where we covered it, and then I don't have to read it.
There we go.
I wonder what would take longer. But yeah, why has no one told me this? Why is nobody or no one told me this before? Nobody.
Yeah, why has nobody told me this before?
Yeah, that is the number one mental health self-improvement book that I recommend to everybody. Regardless.
And she's got some great bits on Instagram too.
Oh, yes. Her Instagram is
they're great.
Valuable.
Very entertaining.
The props that she
The props are great. I love her props.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love her. Okay, so let's one thing he does say is that the moment a woman gets upset or pulls away, a flurry of thoughts rush through a man's head. His analytical brain goes into overdrive, asking the same question over and over. How can I fix this situation and make this woman happy? And his answer to that is correct. The short answer is you can't fix her and you can't make her happy. You can't make people anything. Right. And the whole idea of how can I fix someone is a huge red flag. When you look at your partner as someone who needs to be fixed, you're on a countdown to a miserable breakup already. I
mean, I think a different way to approach this is replace the word fix with support, right? So how can I support this person? And to me, that's more of a kind of a back and forth type of word. I mean, I know it's probably not the end goal is kind of the same. I just like the word support better. I don't know, maybe because I was in IT for so long, and IT support. It's I feel like it's more of a two-way conversation when it comes to support, because you have to find out, you have to ask, hey, what's going on? Like, what do you need right now? Like that, it's a discovery.
Absolutely.
You're being curious. You're coming from a curious standpoint rather than a assumptive, I know what's wrong, I know how to fix this kind of thing.
Yeah, and one of the things that Corey Wayne talks about in his book, which is really good, and I forgot, it's been a while since I read his book, 3% Man, and I sort of minimized how much he goes into relationships, where the first part of his book is about, meeting women and getting dates with women and things like that. But he spends a good chunk of the probably back third of that book on, okay, now once you're in the relationship, here's how you don't screw it up. Mm-hmm. And when a woman comes to you with a problem, whether it's, a fight she got into at work or something you've done, he encourages you to keep drilling down on, tell me more. How else did it make you feel? How did you react to that? How did you feel about that? And just constantly, until she runs out of things to say, your job's not done digging in. And that, I mean, people just want to feel like their experience is valid and legitimate. And we use our words to do that, or we use our words to take that away from people.
And those are much better questions. How do you feel about that? Because in the moment when we are feeling something, that's something we can identify more likely rather than what's wrong. Right. So
what's wrong is not a good question.
Right. In this scenario, or it might have been one of the other case studies.
What's wrong with you is even worse.
Yeah, but even if you leave out the with you part, what's wrong, that is almost offensive in and of itself, because it's almost assuming, well, you shouldn't be, you're almost invalidating.
Exactly. I'm just having a human experience where I've got some negative emotions about something.
It's not wrong,
and you've turned it into right or wrong.
Yes. Yeah. That's a trigger. Wrong is a trigger word for sure.
It is. And again, I'm trying to think about it in terms of how I've probably used that incorrectly before, and also how I would feel if somebody said that to me.
Yeah.
You know, if I was really frustrated about something, or you know, me and an important client or a business partner or something, the relationship wasn't going well and it was affecting my mood, and somebody was like, "What's wrong?" As opposed to, "Hey, it looks like you're going through something. Do you want to talk about it?"
Yeah.
You know, that would be so much more valuable than just "What's wrong?"
or "What's going on?"
Yeah.
Just, yeah. Mm-hmm. You don't want to feel judged.
Exactly.
And you certainly don't want to start out, you know, your first interaction is coming from a place of judgment.
Yeah, that's a great point, because "What's wrong?" does turn an issue immediately black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what's going on right now is wrong, so there must be something that's right. Now, how do I move you from wrong to right?
Yeah. And that person could be upset because they've already been wronged. Like they were a victim
by you or somebody else.
Correct, right? And now you're like,
you're calling their reaction to that is
yeah,
is
man,
wrong.
Ask questions, guys. Don't.
Yeah.
Besides what's wrong.
Okay, so here's the 2 strategies he recommends to dealing with this. The first is to remain indifferent to a woman's emotions, no matter her emotional state. I disagree. The second is to mirror her emotions and diffuse her negative energy. And when he defines mirror in the next chapter, I disagree with that too. So I think both of these are shitty ideas.
Yeah, it's not.
So let's talk about the first one. Remain indifferent to a woman's emotions, no matter her emotional state. I don't know. Indifference has a very strong negative connotation to me. And I don't see reacting to someone who's upset with indifference being the thing that's good for her or for you or the relationship.
Yeah, I feel...
I know what he's trying to say here, I think, but again, I disagree with the way he's choosing to say it. Yeah. I mean... And honestly, the terminology of mirror is the same thing, because you could think of the word mirror like, okay, if your woman is upset and crying or pissed off at you, mirroring that means, okay, well, I'm going to get angry, I'm going to start crying, and I'm going to get pissed off at her. That's what mirroring is. So don't do that.
Right. But
don't be indifferent, don't sit there stone-faced either. I mean, I think you can engage emotionally with her in a way that does not make things worse. It makes things better.
So, I mean, I think both of those options kind of show his perspective on what you talked about, which you kind of hinted at, which is, to me, it's protecting your own. As in his case, I feel like you either mirror or you stonewall or indifferent. Right. And that doesn't necessarily help the situation. All it does is protect you and your own feelings by doing those things.
I would agree.
Right?
Yeah.
And it does nothing for her. It doesn't add value. It doesn't make you a better man or partner in that relationship. All it does is kind of protect yourself. And so my thought here, and that kind of lines up with a lot of the other things that he puts in this book, is it sounds like he's been hurt quite a bit. And a lot of times I think the way he phrases things sounds like it's, how do you protect yourself from getting hurt?
Yes, that would
rather than being a good partner.
Yeah, and again, I think I said it last week or the week before. It's like, man, I like it when he talks about you should wear red shirts because women think they're pretty. I mean, that's the kind of stuff. Like, I'm on board. Let's talk about that stuff. I can't find any fault with that.
Careful of that halo effect.
Right, but yeah, in the back part of this book, it does seem like he treats relationships as a zero-sum game where there's got to be a winner and a loser. And if she does this, then you do this so that you can constantly maintain the upper hand.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man, that doesn't seem like that's the way forward either. So again, contrast that with what we just said about Corey Wayne's book, The 3% Man, where it's like, you can, remain indifferent to a woman's emotions no matter her emotional state, or you could engage curiosity.
Yeah.
You could engage gratitude. You could engage confidence. Like, we'll get through this. We'll figure this out. This is going to be okay. And I think all of those emotions are far better than indifference or turning her state back on her.
Yeah. I think both of those, all three of those potentially could end the situation, but I feel the ways he's suggesting it's going to take a lot longer, and there's going to be a lot more conflict, and ultimately things may not actually get resolved. But yeah, I think being curious, that to me, that's more solution focused rather than just letting things happen versus helping guide things in a direction that is beneficial for everybody.
I mean, another option that you have too is, particularly if she is upset and behaving in a way that, crosses some of your boundaries, she's saying rude things or, throwing things around the apartment or whatever it is, you do have the option to say, okay, look, you're struggling with something right now. I don't have the ability to stay here with you in this. So I'm going to take a break, and then I'll see you in an hour. I'll see you tomorrow. We can talk about what's bothering you and see if we can work our way through it. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you don't have to, if she's doing something that you have a moral or ethical problem with, where you feel like you're being mistreated or you don't have to jump into curiosity. That may be asking too much. I've been in situations where it's like, okay, I'm not going to be able to pull that off. I'm just not.
Yeah.
And so in that case, if you can't share positive emotions like curiosity, optimism, confidence, then maybe it's time to ask for that break and just say, look, you're dealing with something as a result of what you're dealing with. Now I'm dealing with something. And if we stay in the same room and deal with it together, I don't think good things are going to happen. So I'm going to take a break.
Yeah. Yeah. And the key there is that you communicated that before you took that break.
Exactly.
Versus just walked away.
Storming off.
Yeah. And so the next chapter, he talks about the just kind of storming off. And really, he kind of, the guy in that scenario brings his level of communication down to hers in terms of maturity level. And I think that's the whole, I mean, the name of the chapter is Mirror Her Emotions, but that I don't agree with that approach either.
Yeah. And God, it does. Yeah, I am definitely,
and I speak from experience. I speak from experience. That's why I say it doesn't work.
I am seeing this book in a new light as we're going through it in such detail. Where I mean, the very first sentence of this chapter on Mirror Her Emotions is, any man who's been in a serious relationship knows that women frequently pull away and create problems for no reason.
Yeah, that's a bit much.
I would say that's inexcusable.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I don't find Corey Wayne to be perfect. I disagree with things that he says, but whenever he says, whenever guys come to me and say, man, you can't understand women. It's impossible. They're just, you can't understand them. They're just too, and Corey's like, no, once you understand their core motivations and what's important to them, then all of their behavior is completely rational.
Yep.
And I would say that's true for everybody. That's true for men, women, dogs, cats, children, everybody. If you understand what it is that motivates them, then their behavior makes sense all the time. Mm-hmm. And to say, the throwaway, cliches and platitudes of like, oh, men will never understand women. It's like, okay, well, you're not really trying, are you?
That's lazy.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, oh, I'll never understand calculus. I'll never understand physics, because honestly, I'm too late. I don't want to put the work in.
Right.
I could, but I don't feel like it.
Right. So then turn around, and at some point it needs to be motivating enough for you to take the effort to figure that out. Yes. Right. To get uncomfortable.
Right.
To spend the energy to listen to our podcast and to read some of these books and figure out that calculus.
Yeah. And
because it's going to be worth it for you.
Yeah. And if you're flushing enough valuable relationships down the toilet because you don't know how to act, then maybe at some point that will provide a motivation for you to get your shit together.
Yeah. Or call a plumber.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I do not believe that I have ever been in a relationship with a woman who caused problems for no reason.
Right.
I have been in relationships with women where we had problems for reasons I didn't understand, but to just say, oh, she felt too safe and secure. She felt too comfortable. So she decided to start a fight so both of us could feel shitty for a couple of days for no reason whatsoever. Mm-hmm. That is such a, I don't know. That seems like a child's approach to relationships. Like, does he actually believe this, or does he just say it because it moves books? I don't know.
That's a great question. Let's get him on the podcast.
I don't think I would want to talk to him.
I don't know if he'd want to talk to you either. if he listens to one episode.
Okay, so in this case study, it's basically one girl with two guys, as many of them are. And in the first example, she gets annoyed with him because he is inquiring about her health, because I guess she wasn't feeling well, and he's asking if she felt better, and it clearly seems to be a sore subject for her that she doesn't want to talk about. So she gets frustrated that he is sort of continuing to drill down to try to get information on her health status, which I know that can be even in a relationship, your own health, your diet, your exercise, the way you feel on your period. I mean, those can be deeply personal things that women just don't feel like talking about sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And something else to think about too, guys, is, and girls too, I mean, is that other person, if they're not feeling super secure with, their health, or their body, that's going to affect the way they interact with you physically too. They may not be comfortable.
Yeah.
Being naked with you, or you touching certain parts of their body because they feel a little insecure about it. Even for you, though, you might think, "Oh, hey, look, no problem. Your stomach looks great to me. I don't care. It's a little soft or whatever." But for that person, you have no idea what they're going through mentally, and that will then shut. Don't fight it. Don't don't just try to compliment your way out of it.
No.
That's never going to work.
No.
So again, it just kind of be mindful. Read the room, be curious.
Yeah. Andrew Farabee talks about that in one of his books, where he mentions two of his friends and how both of them had partners who weren't feeling good about their bodies, and they responded to it in two different ways, where the one guy was, he tried to compliment her out of her feelings, and that is not the way to do it. Where the second one, said something basically along the lines of, "Hey, that sucks. I know what it feels like to look in the mirror and not be happy with what is looking back at you. And I think you look great, but I get how you're feeling, and just, what do you need?"
Right. So right, Mr. Fix It versus supportive.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so this guy, the first guy gets cut loose because I guess she didn't like the way he was drilling in. And then the next boyfriend asked her how she's feeling. "I'm fine." "You sure?" "I said I'm fine. Relax. I was just making sure you're okay." "Well, don't. It makes you sound stupid." Again, who are these women that are reacting this way?
Wow.
I don't think they exist.
I don't think so either.
And this is, again, a setting at a fancy restaurant, or at least a decent restaurant. Fortunately, the guy in this story has seen this kind of behavior before, so this
isn't a one and done. This isn't like an anomaly. Apparently, a lot of women.
Well, I don't know if he's seen this behavior in her, or he just keeps picking women that behave this way.
Well, it sounds like his picker's a little off.
So he gets up from the table, gives her a smile, and says, "You'll get the check, right?" and then turns around and leaves.
Yeah.
So then
he's mirroring her emotions.
She gets up and yells, "Where are you going?" And he says, "I've got stuff to do." And then she says, "Are you mad at me? I didn't do anything." And he just says, "See ya," and crosses the street and leaves. and then they get into a standoff about, who's going to call or text the other one first. And finally she gives in, because this guy has done exactly what you're supposed to do according to the author.
Yeah.
And she apologizes and asks if he's okay. And again, I would rather be alone than have to come up with solutions to a relationship like this.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather not be with her. I would rather not be him. I would rather be me and alone than deal with either of these people on a regular basis.
Yeah.
This is just, I don't get it. Okay. So how should this be handled? Number one, when she says "I'm fine" and takes a sip of her coffee, he doesn't need to say "You sure?" He could just say, "Okay, she says she's fine,"
mm-hmm.
and leave it there. That's one option. When he does say "I'm sure," or he says "You sure?" and she says "I said I'm fine," and she snapped. Then he tells her to relax, which is also
Which is like you're being, is you're wrong for
right.
That's what that is. Just snap out of it.
Right. Because saying I said I'm fine in a tone is not optimal, but it's also not, I don't know that it's worthy of telling someone that they need to relax. You know what I mean? So I would, if somebody snaps at me and says, I said I'm fine, I think it's better to say, okay, and then just leave it there.
Right.
And not say, relax, I was just making sure you're okay.
Right, because then you're not reading the room. You're not realizing by you asking that question made it worse.
Exactly.
Like her tone.
Yes, my follow-up is what caused this response.
Right.
Not that she has no responsibility, obviously.
Correct.
But you got to understand, okay, I asked her once, she replied, that wasn't enough for me, so I followed up, and now I'm getting this. So this is not a topic that she's comfortable discussing.
Right. So I'm not going to keep doing what I did because I'm going to get what I always got, which is escalating and making her more upset. So take a foot off the accelerator.
Yeah. And then it makes you sound stupid. I
mean, in a way, so let's go in her shoes.
Okay.
Yes, that is a bit of a harsh. However, that could just basically go, again, maybe in this scenario, the woman is saying, do you not see what you just did?
Exactly. Yeah.
Did you miss that you just made me more upset, and now you're continuing this behavior? You are stupid because you're not seeing. It's so obvious to me.
Right.
Stupid to you that you can't see this.
It's a rude way for her to say you're not hearing me.
Perfectly said.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
So the question is, and this is a test that I would often fail, which is, okay, so if you have that realization in the moment, which is difficult, but let's say, okay, she has just told me in a rude way that I'm not hearing her. Should I focus on the fact that I'm not hearing her, or should I focus on the fact that she was rude to me? What am I going to make this conversation about now?
That you tell. Well, in the past, it was that she was rude.
Yes, I would immediately hijack the conversation. And now this is
wronged.
Now this is about, this isn't about how sick or well you're feeling. This isn't about me caring about if you're feeling better. This is now about you were rude to me and I've got to get my pound of flesh. And I mean, maybe sticking with the check's a better option than that, but but barely.
Yeah, that's and again, when I was younger, same thing. It would be about then who is right. Like now she's wrong for treating me that way. And now it's about who's wrong or right. And at some point, somewhere down the road, I learned that you should be whenever there's an argument, you should be focused on, don't worry about the details, because you're going to remember things a certain way. She's going to remember things a certain way. And there isn't, unfortunately, you've got no videotape most of the time to go back to review to see who's wrong or right. But it doesn't make sense. Focus on the solution, and even if everything that other person said was completely inaccurate, let it go. Right. That's not going to help you get to that solution. So if you both are focused on creating the solution, it's a little, it takes a lot of that tension off of the words that are used. Oh, I said this, but I meant that.
Right.
And sometimes people have different meanings for words than you do. Oh boy. Yeah.
I can remember hardly any, subjects of fights that I've had with, I can't remember the topics of why did I have a fight with her about, this, that, or the other. I remember how I felt. I remember how I made her feel, but I do not remember what the topics were that we got in the fights about, at least most of the time. And there's a couple, big ones that I can remember what it was about. But for the most part, what you carry with you is the way you felt while you were going through that conflict, not the thing that you were arguing about. Right.
Now, I have something that I one of our listeners had said we're not being vulnerable enough on these podcasts and sharing enough of our own backstory.
I doubt anyone will say it about this episode.
Good.
Go on.
Hey, we're responding to our feedback. So, I lived with a woman. This was probably 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, where communication was not either of our fortes. And so she was living with me, and one day she yelled at me for leaving crumbs on the counter and was upset about other things. But that, I feel like, was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
Turns out it was her crumbs. I know it was her crumbs because I hadn't used the kitchen or whatever for a couple of days. She finds these crumbs. I am
immediately thinking about how I would react to that situation.
And so, of course, I'm like, they're not my crumbs. And she's still basically, it didn't really matter. And so I knew I was in the right. And we didn't end up talking we lived together. We didn't end up talking for 2 weeks. So she had a job out of the house. I had a job in the house, but we went to the same gym, and we'd go to the gym separately and pass each other in gym and not talk to each other. And I remember specifically being on a step mill, and she'd walk by, and we just kind of caught each other in each other's eyes, didn't say anything to each other. And we were committed boyfriend and girlfriend. And we'd been together for a couple of years, and it was it was an ego-based thing. It was who's going to apologize, because I felt like this whole thing, she just kind of blew out of proportion and made up. And it turns out it was probably something, and I don't even remember who came to who first. I think she actually may have come to me and said, I don't like fighting with you. And I immediately I don't like fighting with you either, because I was just, after 2 weeks, we were just so exhausted from ignoring each other, living in the same house. And it was just, all I needed to do was just come and just be a little bit more curious. And it probably never would have gotten to that if I had come from that perspective to begin with.
Yeah. I'm responding to a lot in that story, which is...
Yeah, I could see on your face. You were like...
The first part was, the worst parts of me react to the fact that they were her crumbs, as victory. Yes, now I can really get her under my thumb. Now I can really put her in her place. And that is not a part of me that has served me or the people that I love in any way, but boy, it is always there. And I'm always in a battle against it.
How appropriate that they were crumbs, right? And in this scenario, right? Yeah. Literally these were crumbs, right?
Yeah. And so that was part of it, but then
no ants, no bugs, by the way. It was just crumbs on the counter. So go ahead.
Yeah, but that and then the anxiety of being with somebody for multiple weeks and keeping that hostility going.
And we slept in the same bed too.
Oh my God. I cannot imagine how I don't think I would have the will to stick with it that long. I would break down and try to use some sort of in all honesty, probably some sort of non-vulnerable olive branch that I could try to weasel my way out of this uncomfortable situation.
So in all fairness, I was a nice guy up until that point, meaning I had a whole bunch of covert contracts.
I'm sure you did, yeah.
That didn't get fulfilled, that I was resentful for, that I never communicated about. So that's why I was holding on so tightly to these crumbs.
I get it. Oof, yeah, that is heavy. Man, I hope I never find myself in a situation like that. I hope I can
yeah.
And part of it is, I think one of the strategies for avoiding being stuck in a relationship where those kinds of things happen is you got to have resources in your life, whether it's friends or your men's group or your therapist, where the first day or first few hours after that standoff has started, you got to be able to unload to somebody and say, and not be ashamed and not be ready to be judged or made fun of by them, to say, man, I just had the stupidest fight with my girlfriend over some crumbs on the kitchen counter. And now I feel like both of us are in a position where we're not going to budge, and this sucks. And then your friend, your therapist, your men's group can say, okay, I've been in a situation like that too, and it does suck. And if you want to try something, you could try this and see if maybe you could, bridge the gap. But, oh God, I can't.
And I think part of the reason why
do you remember talking to anybody about it when you were going through it?
No.
Yeah.
Of course not.
Yeah.
No. And unfortunately, the other things that led to that standoff were never addressed. We never brought those up. It was just, I'm tired of fighting with you. I don't want to fight anymore. Right. It wasn't, hey, we should talk about what led to this.
The 2-week fight over the crumbs, as miserable as it is less miserable than how you think the conversation could go about the real problem.
And part of that, for me, I realize, is because I wasn't used to regularly having those types of conversations.
Right.
I had no idea
exactly
how easy or difficult it would be, or even have the skill set to be able to recognize and tap into my feelings and communicate those in a healthy way, because it's just not something that I practiced.
Yeah. And I mean, think about it. It is easier in however you define easier. It is easier to have a multi-week fight about crumbs than it is to have a difficult, uncomfortable conversation about why sex or money or the way you're raising your kids is not meeting your needs and it needs to change. I mean, Jesus, those are all three of those, just off the top of my head, are miserable things to get into. I mean, they shouldn't be. If you've got a healthy relationship and you guys can and do talk about things, you should be able to handle that. But if you come out of a house that I came out of, then starting those conversations and having them in a way that doesn't lead to everybody hating everybody else is pretty tough.
And again, I think it helps if you go in with that mindset of, let's find a solution to the things that I'm concerned about, the money, the sex, whatever that looks like.
Right.
And you're focused on creating a solution together and not on who's wrong or right, or who should be feeling a certain way or not feeling a certain way, right. Or you made me feel by doing this and not taking responsibility for your own emotions, right. Or a lot of things to think about.
Yeah. There's another quote in here after the case study where he says, expressions of frustration and anger will only pour fuel on the situation as the woman comes to realize that she now has power over you and your emotions. Which, again, I mean, he makes it seem so Machiavellian, like there's some sort of, everything's a power game with him. And yes, if you react with frustration and anger, she will realize that she has power over your emotions, and that will bum her out. She will feel badly about that. She will not feel like, yay, I got him by the balls. I can make him do what I want to. It's, oh no, I'm dealing with something that's difficult. And now he's just revealed that he doesn't have what it takes to deal with it either. So now neither of us can be in control of the situation. And there goes my safety and security right out the window.
Exactly. It's more about, okay, well, you just lost as, a partner in terms of your value, what you're bringing to that relationship.
In this moment.
And right. You basically have shown her the value she thought she was getting from you, right. And in terms of the safety and security and that, able to manage your emotions as well as her emotions and make her feel better. That's not there anymore. Right. So there's a couple of things that come up there. It's not that, oh, I'm not getting something out of the relationship. It's, oh, he's a different person than I thought he was. Right. And that then contributes to feeling anxious and insecure and like not knowing who this person is. Now her safety is threatened again because you don't know what you're not a known object. What she thought isn't what you are. Right.
Correct.
And so that can be scary too.
And while I don't consider these situations to be a deliberate test where a woman is, trying to test you for fitness, it can turn into a test if you fail it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, the idea is, women do not share their deep and troubling emotions with men that they know won't be able to handle them. Mm-hmm. They avoid, yeah. if you're in a woman's life and, whether it's because, she friend zoned you because you're attracted to her, but she doesn't see you that way or whatever, she is not going to share the difficult emotions with you that she is not certain you would be able to handle. So when you're in a romantic relationship with a woman and she comes to you, again, whether it's something you did, something she experienced with her family, work, whatever, and she's upset and she brings that to you, her expectation is that you will be able to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you don't handle it, when you react to her state with frustration or anger or
something that's not helpful,
or, frankly, I think weakness is a good word to use in this case. Emotional weakness, where, you let it rattle you, you let it put you in a bad mood, you let it affect your ability to relate to her, then her attraction to you and her sense of safety and security is going to take a hit. And there are only so many of those hits that can be taken before she comes to the realization of, okay, this relationship is not what I thought it was.
Yeah. And the first step is you have to learn how to handle your own emotions first.
Oh, absolutely.
Before you can start taking on the burden of somebody else's. So guys, when they say, I think that's one of the best pieces of advice where people say, hey, like if you're just coming out of a serious relationship and you broke up with that person, take time to work on yourself. I think a lot of that probably comes down to also learn who you are again, but at the same point by yourself, but at the same point, get good at managing your emotions and your life on your own before you then get involved with somebody else, because then you really can't, if you aren't healed and you aren't able to handle your own stuff, how are you supposed to add value to somebody else unless you're going to take?
Right.
And that's not fair. And I'm a Libra.
You sure are. All right, so let's stop there for today. I think this is I think we've covered both his positions and our responses to them in pretty good detail. The next chapter is Women Always Test, and he goes through and mentions a few different kinds of tests and how men pass those tests. And I suspect I will have some issue with what he believes is not a test, what motivates those tests, how to pass those tests. I suspect I will disagree with much of what he is going to present, and I look forward to it.
Why are you going to start disagreeing now? I mean, you've been so supportive.
I like to get my disagreements in early. I'm a disagreeable person, Dan. So yeah, I will say that testing is required by every person in a personal relationship who is planning on investing in the other person. There will be testing because it is too expensive to invest in the wrong person. And it's way more expensive for women than it is for men, because if you get pregnant by the wrong guy who doesn't have what it takes to protect you and the kid and provide the resources that you need, that is a life ruiner. Where, as we've said before, with guys, if you get the wrong woman pregnant, it's not so easy now as it was 100 years ago. But if you get the wrong woman pregnant, you just leave town and go start a family somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that has been the way for most of human history that men would deal with, if they decided that I got the wrong woman pregnant, I'll just book it and leave town. And again, that's, the naturalistic fallacy says that, just because something is natural, that means that it's okay. That's not okay, but it's also naive to not look at that's the way that people behaved for most of our time together. And so we have some of those tendencies built into us if we don't get them under control.
Yeah. And then we certainly go down a rabbit hole here too. I don't want to go too long, but in terms of unconditional love, a lot of times that we just assume that the partner that we end up marrying, that means you're going to be loved unconditionally no matter what you do. And you don't need to necessarily, quote unquote, prove yourself anymore. And a lot of times that comes from, we're loved unconditionally sometimes from our parents. And then
in most cases, yeah.
Yeah. And then we just assume, well, once we have a partner, that's going to be the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's not accurate. And I think I've made that mistake where
same.
I've like, you're my girlfriend. You love
I won.
Me. I don't need to prove myself anymore.
Right.
I don't need to work as hard anymore. And that's probably why most of my relationships haven't worked out.
Right. But when you love yourself and you love someone else who you spent all that time with, then in a healthy person, I would argue that spurs additional growth. That motivates you to constantly be improving yourself. And And when it's not working that way, it's because, you know, there's some piece of the puzzle that's not what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
All right. Good talk, Dan. I will enjoy getting into the chapter on testing with you next time. And we will continue to cut open our sternums and put in the rib spreader and let people see what's underneath.
All right. I'm all about it. Sounds good.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.